Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So today is going to be my update for my Eyeshadow Roulette project. So if you haven't seen, I have been updating this project every month on my YouTube channel this year, and I also did this project on my Instagram last year as well. So I will be sure to link my other videos down below as well as my Instagram if you want to go check those out. Today we are going to be, of course, going through the shades that I had in for the month of May, and then we will draw new shades for June. So as always, before I get into the 5 shades, I'm going to share with you some bonus pans that I got. So the first one comes from my Maybelline The Nudes palette, and it is this shade right here. As you guys can see, I finally got a little baby pan in the shade. I have been working on this shade for what feels like forever. This is the oldest palette in my collection, so obviously one of the oldest shades in my collection, and I'm so happy to finally have a pan on this shade. Yeah, I'm so happy about this. This is my most used shade in this palette, so I was quite happy to be able to work on this palette enough this month to hit pan. The second pan comes from my Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air palette, and it is in the shade right here, another little baby pan. And I'm covering up the shade that I had in for the month so you guys don't see the progress on that one quite yet. But I knew I was really close to hitting pan on this shade, so I wasn't super surprised that I was able to manage this shade. But I am, of course, happy to have another pan in my collection. So with all of that out of the way, I will now get into the 5 shades that I had in for the month of May. So the first palette I had in here was my Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air palette, and I had shade number 5. So I will insert a picture of what that one looked like at the start of the month. And here is what we are looking like now. So hopefully you guys can see that I did manage to use this one a bit. You can see some actual usage on this. I used this one 6 times this past month, and I'm quite happy with that progress. This was probably my least used shade in this palette before I rolled it into this project, and now I really do enjoy using it. I have found ways that I really like to wear it. I mostly have been wearing it in the outer corner, and I just found that that works best for me, and this has now become a shade that I am excited to use, and that's kind of the point of this project for me, is getting some use out of shades that I might not use as much, and just really learning how I like to use certain shades. So that is the update on this one. Next up, we have my Rude Cosmetics Roaring 20s Reckless palette, and from here I had the shade Charleston. So I will insert a picture of what that one looked like. So here is the progress on this shade. I only used this one 4 times, but that was pretty good for me. I didn't wear makeup that much this month, especially towards the end of the month. So I'm pretty happy with the progress that I did end up getting on some of these shades. So while 4 shades isn't a lot, I am still happy with the progress that I made, and you can see a little bit of usage in it. These shades are pretty soft and powdery to use, so it doesn't take too much usage to show actual progress, but there's no real dip or anything. It's just a little bit of disturbance in the pan, which I'm completely fine with. This is a pretty new palette in my collection, and I don't want to be able to use a shade 4 times and hit pan. So I still have quite a bit of ways to go on any of these shades if I want to hit pan, but I am completely okay with that. So next up is my Maybelline The Nudes palette. So this was the one that I got the other bonus pan from, and I had shade number 2, so I will insert a picture of what that one looked like. And here is where we are now. You are going to see no difference in this shade. I only used it 4 times, but these shades are so hard pressed, and I don't know if that's just because of the age of this palette or if that's just how these shadows are in general, but there's going to be no difference. That's why it took me so long to hit pan in this other shade over here. But yeah, I was happy to get at least a little bit of use out of this palette. Once again, this wasn't a shade that I reached for all that much, and it's a nice shade. It's one I probably will end up reaching for from this palette again, but yeah, it's definitely not even close to hitting pan on it. It will take me many, many more uses if I even want to focus on trying to hit pan on this shade at some point. But I did enjoy using it this month, just the 4 times, but I'm also happy to be rolling it out. Alright, moving on to my I Heart Revolution Princess and the Frog palette. I had the shade Witch Doctor, so I will insert a picture of what that one looked like. And here is where we are now. So this one was my least used shade with only 2 uses. I just didn't really have looks that called for a dark purple, really. And I found that this shade only really works for me as a liner. I didn't really enjoy using it in the crease. It just looked kind of patchy, and that could just be because I didn't blend it properly or whatever. This could completely be on me, and I do still think it's a really pretty shade, and I enjoy using it as a liner, and that's probably how I will continue to use it. But just the one time that I did use it in the crease, it didn't look the greatest in my opinion, but I do still want to test it out a little bit more. Obviously 2 uses isn't really enough to fully form an opinion on a shadow, but I was happy to at least reach for it a couple times, and I really do enjoy this palette, and I definitely want to get more use out of it in the future. Alright, last but certainly not least is my Bella Cosmetics Daisy Days palette. So I have the shade Roots, so I will insert a picture of what that one looked like. And here is where we are now with the shade. So I used this one 5 times this past month, which I was super happy about because this is the newest palette in my collection, and I definitely wanted to get some use out of it. And you can start to see a little bit of disturbance in the pan, and maybe just the slightest little baby dip. These are pretty soft shadows, so it doesn't take much to show progress on them. And I had used it a couple times before rolling it in as well. But what I found with this shade is I'm not a huge fan of what it looks like on my skin tone. I think it pulls really cool toned, and on other people that might look good, but I feel like just for me it doesn't look very good. I still want to play around with it, figure out how else I might like to wear it, because I do really love this palette and I think the shade looks really pretty in the pan. So I do want to just keep experimenting with this palette and with this shade to just figure out how I like to use it best. But the rest of this palette I am just super in love with. I have liked how pretty much every single shade in here performs, but for this shade it's just personal preference, how I feel like it looks on my skin tone. It's not a bad shade by any means though. Alright, so those were the 5 shades that I had in for May, and now we can move on to drawing for June. Alright, so I have the 5 palettes that I'm rolling in for June stacked up next to me, and we will just get started with the first one, which is going to be my ColourPop Midnight Masquerade palette. So here is what this one looks like on the inside. So many beautiful shades. I really, really adore this palette. And once again, when drawing for shades, if a shade has already been in this project or has pan on it, I will re-roll. And for this palette specifically, if I draw one of the pressed glitters, I'm also going to re-roll, just because I don't really want to be working on a pressed glitter for the month. I would rather get some use out of one of the other shades. So I have my Pretty Random app set from 1 to 15. So we will go ahead and randomize, and we get shade number 2, which is the shade Damsel. So Damsel is this super pretty mauvey purpley pink matte shade, one of my absolute favorite shades in this palette. So I'm super excited to be working on this shade for the month, and it'll pair nicely with some of the other shades that I really enjoy in this palette as well. Like Spinning Wheel is one of my favorite shades too. So I am so excited about having the shade in for the month. Next up we have my Wet n Wild Not a Basic Peach palette. So I wanted to pull this one in this month because I don't really use it all that much. So I wanted to try and get some use out of it. So I will randomize 1 to 10. And we get shade number 5. So here is a close-up of what this shade looks like. I am super excited. This was the shade in here that really inspired me to buy this palette in the first place, and I have created a couple looks using this blue shade that I really do enjoy. It's not the most pigmented, but I am still excited to use it this month and try and get some good use out of this palette as well. So next up we have my Ulta and Harry Potter Hufflepuff palette. Matches my nails. So here are the 9 shades in this palette, and I'm super excited to be rolling in a shade from this. So we will randomize 1 to 9. Number 1. So number 1 is Sherbet. So it's just this matte off-white shade. Gonna be pretty easy to use, and I am actually really happy that this is the shade that was chosen, as it will allow me to play with any of the other shades in this palette as well. So yeah, and I'm just always happy to have a basic setting shade in my rotation. So next up is my Essence Salute Paris palette, and here is what this one looks like on the inside. And once again, I will randomize 1 through 9. We get number 9. So number 9 is this dark kind of purpley shimmer. So here's a close-up of what this shade looks like, and I'm quite happy that I got a shimmer from this palette because I think those are the standout shades in here. The mattes are okay, but I think the shimmers are where they really shine in this palette, so I am very happy to get a little bit of use out of this shade this month and play around with some of the other shades in here as well. And lastly, we are going to be drawing a shade from my new palette, the I Heart Revolution Little Mermaid palette. So here are what all of these beautiful shades look like. I'm so excited to hopefully get some more fun color, and we will randomize 1 through 18. So number 15, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 15, one of my favorite shades in this palette. So this is the shade Flotsam from the Little Mermaid palette, and I am so excited. You guys can already see some usage on the shade. I really enjoy using this as a liner, and I am so excited to get some use out of the shade and get some use out of this palette as well. So those are all 5 of my shades for the month of June. I am so excited about all of the shades that were rolled in this month, and I will go ahead and insert a picture of what the swatches look like. So yeah, that is my update for this month. If you want to go check out my Instagram as well, I do update this project on there, as well as I started doing a Pan That eyeshadow project on my Instagram where I'm just focusing on one eyeshadow at a time to hit pan on, kind of as a little sister project to this one, but I'm just updating that on my Instagram if you want to go check that out. But yeah, I am very excited for this month, and if you enjoyed, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads, and let me know what else you would like to see from me as well. And with that, I will see you all in my next video. Bye!